Welcome to the Cowboy Office Show. Your co-hosts are Jody Brainerd and Brian Diger, reining industry veterans with over 120 years combined experience judging, training, living, and serving this Western lifestyle. The Cowboy Office Show brings you expert analysis and epic discussion on the sport of reining to encourage you to ask more questions, get involved, and manage change. Drop your email at cowboyoffice.com to be the first to receive updates and never miss an episode. Saddle up as we ride into today's show.
Well, it's showtime. Welcome to Chasing 82. I'm Brian.
And I'm Jody. It's going to be another fun show. The show's number 2, the Oklahoma Ride and Slide Derby. And we're going to uncover what the open level is doing in our industry. I mean, our world's best stat man has been working overtime, and he's got some great stuff for us. Brian, before we get started, I'd just like to mention a couple words about a guy named Charlie Vaughn. We've known Charlie, or knew Charlie forever. Charlie just recently passed away, and there was no greater supporter of the National Reining Horse Association than that guy. Charlie was also a fine attorney. I mean, a great non-pro showman, a lot better golfer than we were, and just a great guy. And he will be missed. He's one of the finest guys that I think I ever had a chance to meet in the business.
Yeah, I remember him well, and he did have a deep passion for the reining horses.
Well, anyway, just our best and condolences to Charlie's family. And Charlie, we know you're watching. We miss you, buddy.
And we'll see you again.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Well, if you've ever wondered, are there enough horses in the aged events sector of our industry? I think we got a little bit of a feel for that answer, because now as we look at Oklahoma Ride and Slide, and this is their website, so anybody that wants some more info can go straight to them. You don't have to be in Oklahoma. Between Oklahoma and Florida, there was 243 total draws for these two events. So this is the second one, being Oklahoma. Only 3% of horses showed in both events. So are there plenty of aged event horses? The answer is yes, without a doubt. I haven't doubted that for a long time, but it's interesting as we start to compile the answers, Jody, the numbers for it anyways. The other thing that's very interesting, and I'll show you a piece in a minute, is the age breakout, because in this one, we were able to pull the age of horses and gender. So it was actually quite interesting. This is the entries, because when you put both of these events together, but this is the entries for Oklahoma this year. Now you got to remember that Oklahoma had 3 divisions in the open, level 2, level 3, level 4, and they've been consistent with that. So we're comparing the same thing from last year as this year. And the blue is 2025 and the green is 2026. Oklahoma's entries were down just a little bit. Their entries were down 20% and the draw was down 11%. And the difference of those two is cross entries. But you can look, this graph is showing you the entries per the 3 divisions. They had 59 compared to 71 in the level 4, 67 compared to 91 in the level 3, and 53 this year compared to 67 in the level 2. So I don't think that those are significant numbers. They're not trends to the industry. I think that they're actually trends to the region. Still a very strong component.
I agree. I mean, it was still a good horse show. I mean, it's like, by number standard, I think it was I think those are great numbers. That little drop off again, and we'll talk more about this in a little while, but it's just because there are so many great horse shows with so much money added. I just wonder if some of those, maybe people are taking a look at what's coming. You think?
Yes, I do think that they are taking a peek at what's coming. This is the way that gender breaks out. This is this year. So just looking at the Open Derby at Oklahoma, you had 50% of them were studs, 29% are geldings, 21% are mares. So that's the way that genders break out. Here's the age. And so it does. Now, I thought of you a lot when we pulled this together and summarized it, because look at the amount of 4-year-olds. And this event was dominated by 4-year-olds in volume. And the horse that wins it, Fernando wins it, is a 4-year-old mare. Now, I think the thing that gets to be interesting, and not that they aren't great horses, they are, but the 4-year-old competing against the 5 and the 6-year-old, I think that is getting to be very interesting. The numbers say our industry can pull the 4-year-olds out if we want, but we are way into one run, multiple purses, get the most we can with a run as opposed to anything different. That's what's happening.
Yeah. And for me, it's not something, but because I didn't have barns full of those
Nobody
nice
did.
horses. And it was like those 4-year-olds, I always tried to save them even then, a little bit. And I mean, that was like trying to protect them because they were young. I have another quick question I would ask you back to the gender thing and the number of studs. We have 50% of these horses are stallions, right? What do you think would happen if we polled the trainers and said, would you rather be riding this horse as a stallion or this horse as a gelding? And are you leaving him a stallion, obviously, because you think that he's going to be worth more money than that? And if we take a look at all the breeding horses that we have today, all the nice producing horses, and with frozen semen, you can breed to whoever you want to forever. Why are we leaving those horses stallions? Do you think that's going to equate to more money down the road? Are they thinking that this horse is going to be tougher and stronger because he's a stud? I mean, it's a question. For me, I think it should be the exact opposite. I think there should be this many geldings and this many stallions.
I would have thought the same thing, because to me, where can the geldings go? Go be show horses. And is there a very good demand, high demand on finished reining horses? And the answer is yes. I hear it all the time that people can't find affordable ones. There's plenty of them out there, but everybody wants an arm and a leg.
Right.
So if there was more, the prices would come down a little bit. And if there were more geldings, you'd find a nice sweet spot. And can more people be right? That made logical sense to me. But the fact that the industry is not, and I just assume they are, they're playing the game that a stud, if it's a good one, it's going to ring the bell. But the likelihood of having a good one, odds are against you.
Absolutely. Yeah, back years ago when we were shipping so many to Europe, there was such a huge luxury taxes on the geldings. Everybody left them a stallion, right? Because we're going to get more money in Europe for this horse because he's a breeding horse. And it's like, well, whatever. They've got their own now, so that doesn't happen anymore. So anyway,
those days are gone.
Yeah, those days are gone. But yeah, it would be interesting to poll the guys that are riding the gelding or the stallions and say, hey, if you had your druthers, what would it be?
What would you do?
Yeah. So just an interesting question.
And
that would be for all, interestingly enough, along that line, I rode lots and lots of horses for women, for females, and I never had one of those ever question me if I said, we need to geld this horse. They go, oh, hell yeah, go for it. But I had plenty of guys go, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Right. So I don't know what the reason is there, but it was interesting.
Might have been an individual emotional component, right?
Yeah, exactly. Perhaps.
Yeah. Well, when we look at the last year to this year, total purse money, the fact that Oklahoma's Derby this year was slightly down, just in simple numbers, just slightly. The purse money was actually up. So that, I thought, it was 11% increase in purse. Total purse money comes out to be almost identical, and that's just the difference of the cross entries. So that's the way that works out. Now, I know we talked about this last time. We'll have to do some polling on this, but here's the probability. And the probability to make the cut lines. Now, these guys pay 15 per division, which is pretty standard. So your probability is right in the same ballgame. And this is the difference between last year and this year, which is almost no difference. And that difference is because the entries were slightly lower this year than they were last year, but the purse money was up. Okay. That's just the way it worked. Okay. The fact that they're driving forward with the purses, I mean, they had a 50,000 added across those three divisions at level 2, level 3, level 4, more than respectable. Quality of competition and quality of volume. Fascinating. I do want to bring up some interesting facts when we looked at and cross-referenced both these events, because we're going to continue to do this across the year because nobody's ever done it. And we can sit around and talk and wonder and ask ourselves all the hypothetical situations. But the point's this, because again, you go back to 240 some entries between the two shows. 240 some draws. There were 3 horses that were in the Open in Florida that show up in the non-pro in Oklahoma, and 7 horses that were in the Open in Florida that come back and show in the Derby here in Oklahoma. And we've got the scores to all of those, but it was fascinating. On one of them, the level 1 that won level 1 in Florida, Wesley Brown's horse, it's called Hey Listen Here.
Yes.
Wins the level 1 in Florida, and he comes back and shows it here in Oklahoma. marks a 214.5 in the non-pros. Marked a 218.5 to win the level 1 open in Florida, and marks a 214.5 in the non-pro here in Oklahoma. I thought that was pretty cool. The 7 horses that show up in the open in both ways, and for the most part, I think they all, let me just go through this real quick because there were 7 horses. I Dream of Stopping, Desiree Kiltz. She shows in Florida, marks a 217.5, shows in Oklahoma in the first section, marks a 216. Very consistent. Mega American, Matthew Baton. He shows in Florida, 215.5. Comes back to Oklahoma, shows in the first section, 220.5. Gets a big piece of it. The Little Colonel, Nathan Piper, he ended up, wasn't he tied? Oh, he tied 25th in Florida on this one. This was a different horse.
Right.
Marks a 217.5. He comes back to Oklahoma, marks a 224. All White is a horse that Cade McCutcheon owns and shows. He was 18th in the level 4, marked a 219 in Florida. He didn't have a very good ride here in Oklahoma, 208.5 in the second section. Titan Annie's Spook. This one I think is fascinating because you know how we talk about that half point making a difference and the cut line and the bubble of paychecks? Well, this horse and rider, Titan Annie's Spooks, PGS, Geronimo Lobo rides it. He was tied in the level 4, tied in the level 3, and tied in the level 2 in Florida. And he was right on the bubble in level 2, which is 1 horse out of the paycheck. And it was a great example when I saw him. Well, he comes back to Oklahoma, marks a 218.5 in the second section. But that's a horse that's sitting right on the bubble that we always talk about.
Right.
And that's why that accuracy is so important.
Important. Yes.
And then there's 2 more. America's Next Anthem with Matt Mills. He shows Bosque Ranch owns him. He shows is tied in the level 4 and tied in the level 3 in Florida, marks a 217, comes back to Oklahoma, section 2, marks a 220. And then the last one is the Next Kid with Cade McCutcheon. So he had 2 of them. He owns it and showed it. He tied for 12th in the level 4 in Florida with a 221. He marks a 225.5 in the section 2. He's right up there. He's ringing the bell.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, now that really is. I think that is so neat. And I'm glad that you're the first one to crack the comparison numbers here. I mean, that's really, really good. And I just can't wait to see what they're going to do at the next one. I mean, I'm already wanting to know. I mean, how many are going to be 4-year-olds? How many are going to show again? How many have shown this year? And I mean, at the end of this year, I want to know how many runs we put on some of these guys. I mean, I really do. Today's horses are so much better than our yesterday's horses that we had to ride. But you know what? They also have to show so much harder, and they have so much more laying on them. So, is there really any difference? You know, I mean,
yeah.
With the pressure that these guys are under?
I hear you, and I think about that one a lot, and I wonder some of those nuances and differences in today's time versus in our time. In our time, that the time that you had to get up there and climax these things was a very short window. It just was. You had to follow their 3-year-old year and a little bit of the spring of the 4-year-old year in the Derby, and then if you had one that wanted to step up and give the open title a stab, okay, fine, but we wouldn't see. You'd see 5 or 10 horses that would do that. We're seeing hundreds.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, heck, there was only a 4-year-old event. You know, there wasn't room for it. It was either the Super Stakes or the Derby, whichever name got the money that year. Right? It was pretty funny, but it's amazing how many there are, how many good ones there are. But yeah, I'm really curious, and this is great info to see basically over the long term, how long they last at that level.
Yes.
And how many will drop down into that non-pro category to see maybe rather not, if they lighten their load up a little bit and let those things out from underneath that open pressure, maybe they can get better.
And you know how we used to always say, and I believe that this is fundamentally true, because the control game with the reining horse is there's a spot where the horse gets to second, they know too much. And the more they know, the more they're going to guess and try and react on their own. So there was always a philosophy on a great reining horse only had so many runs. It would appear to me, and I don't know this, but if we looked over the lifetime of a reining horse in today's time, one, they are older, and it appears that they have many more runs in them than what we did in the older days, right?
Absolutely. And I think there are several reasons for that. And we've talked about that in the past. But number one, I think is the vast improvements in sports medicine. Not only have pedigree genetically, these things better and bred to do what we want them to do. And in our day, we're trying to take some stuff that wasn't near bred for this kind of stuff and trying to make them that anyway. If they were hot, half the time they were sore and we didn't know it. We didn't know a horse had hocks in the day. I was like, you didn't know that. You just, well, he's not stopping. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but with that,
Got a bad attitude.
with that, but that improvement in the sports medicine is huge with these guys. So, I mean, the veterinary care that these things are getting, the care, obviously the shoeing, everything's improved. So it's just huge. But I think, the training techniques with the paid warm-ups that, we never used to have, or you couldn't afford it, or there wasn't time. You just didn't have a horse show that started 3 days early so you could practice. Would have been great, but nobody can afford it. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's how much we've grown and learned. I'm going to show you 2 pieces here. These are metrics on the show itself, similar to what we did last time, so that we're keeping some consistency. This is a scattergram. It goes fast. What we did this time was just put those lines or trend lines. So you can see that they're all flat, which makes last year to this year very equal, except for one. That's that blue line that takes a slight dip to the right. That's the entry difference. But when you a high score, average high score, cut lines, I want to show you, because cut lines and scores and the depth of competition, and here it comes. This is cut lines, high scores, and entries per division for the 2 years. So the top group is last year, 2025, and the bottom group is this year, 2026, and the 3 divisions, level 4 down to level 2. And it shows you the numbers in each. And so you can look at the high score. It's right in the ball game. Last year was a 228.5, and this year is a 229.5. Cut lines, 222 to 222.5. Half point difference between last year and this year for level 4 cut line. That's deep stuff.
Really?
So,
yeah.
And being in Oklahoma, would you be overly surprised about that? The answer would be no, because the I-35 corridor, you're in the heart of it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, but Florida is running right with it. So it doesn't matter where you are. That's where the industry is. That's my take on that one.
Yes. That is interesting. And I was looking at some of those, comparing year to year. It's just amazing. The 2026 horses may be slightly higher as far as the winners are concerned, but it's just good horses are good horses. When you're talking about even between, champions and reserve champions, if you're talking about a half point or a point between those horses from a maneuver standpoint on a 5-judge system, it's a thing.
Correct.
Right? So
correct. And yeah, that's the depth of the competition that we've been dealing with for some time. So yeah, that's not new news either, but it's a little bit more factual because we're actually looking at those pieces in more detail than we ever have before. When we compare last year to this year, the scores are right on the same target. Last year, level 4, Casey Deary wins it. Riding Customize My Dream. That horse that Devin Warren owns, phenomenal horse.
right. He is.
Matthew Bouton wins level 3, and David Moore wins level 2. And then this year,
But Fernando.
Yep, Fernando Salgado wins it. Last horse in the draw. Everybody can talk about that one. The last horse in wins it. Riding No Rush, owned by Sky Lazaro, lives in Utah. Last horse in the draw. It was absolutely phenomenal. 229.5. That's an average score of 76.5. And that horse is by Spook's Got a Spark. We're going to see more horses by that. That's a son of Spook's Got a Whiz. And we're starting to see some of them, and holy moly. And the dam of that horse is going to rush you. And then reserve was Cade on Noise Complaint, owned by Bosky Ranch. Marks a 228.5. That's an average 76.2. And if you just look at the average between those two, it's a half a point. That's what it is. And Cade's horse is a gunner out of Blazed by Commander.
I think that's interesting. That's a maneuver. That's a maneuver, that
Correct.
half point, right? So, I mean, it's a maneuver and one that sticks. Those are great horses, obviously great runs and a good big pen with really good ground. And they're as tough, or if not tougher this year than they were last. So it's just amazing to me. Can you, Brian, this might be a really good part of this. You told me that this show did something really interesting in the draw that I found interesting. And I didn't keep track of it like you did. Can you share what they did with the draw at this show as far as the levels were concerned, day 1 to day 2 and the Derby?
Oh, absolutely. I thought it was fascinating because, first of all, they split the draw. So they Started at midday on Friday for the first section of the Open Derby. It started about 11 o'clock Central Time. And then they came back Saturday morning and had second section. And at first, I assumed they split that so that they could handle volume if necessary. Because again, you're talking about, last year they had 129 draws. Well, that's 13 plus hours sitting in the chair and your consistency gets in trouble. So all of those things would be somewhat givens. So I assumed they split it, one, so that they could handle volume and not be under pressure. Two, what it appears the way they did that was the section 1 draw was level 2 and level 3 riders. Plus, they allowed you could ride 4 horses in this Open Derby as long as the 4th horse was a standalone 4-year-old. And maybe that's why their 4-year-olds were so up there in volume of section. So the section 1 draw had level 2 and 3 riders and the 4 riders that had the 4-year-old in it. Then they come back on Saturday and that draw is level 3 and level 4 riders. And it flowed very well. It was done outstanding. I think they did a phenomenal job. And I think they helped the officiating be way more consistent because the depth of that competition was more equal in your peer and you don't get those fluctuations as much. And that's true.
It really is. So basically what you're saying, day 1, it was horses that were not entered, didn't cross enter to the level 4.
Correct.
Just the 2 and the 3.
Correct.
Is that okay? So, and it maybe is a little bit like some of those, and really in today's day and age, I mean, I get it. There's a fact that, we looked at Shani Rayfax last week talking about a horse that would have won the level 4 had she been entered on it. So this is not to say that those level 2 and level 3 horses aren't capable of showing in the level 4, but just some guys that felt like they probably had a better shot if they stayed in that level 2 and 3 division and are 1 up or whatever they do instead of having to get into the level 4. But I completely agree with you. That's been one of the biggest gripes that I had even when I was chair of the committee and monitoring a lot of those major events for NRHA, when we would have the open finals or even the non-pro finals for that matter. But the open finals, those guys were judging so many horses before they got to the nighttime performance of our top 35 or whatever it was.
You're burnt.
You're burnt. Yeah.
You're burnt.
No
Fatigue is the biggest factor that they're not paying attention to.
Yeah.
So you need those officials to peak when you want them to, which is the open finals.
Absolutely.
And you actually we've had them wore out.
So I think this is there's some legitimately good things to happen in this situation right here. So yeah.
I think many of the major events could take note of this. I think their move with splitting those sections that way, not in the same day, but on 2 different days, is phenomenal. I think it was a great move, so I give them a lot of credit. There's no doubt. I want to show you, because we'll finish the winning of the 3 divisions. Now, this is the open division. You got to remember, Oklahoma had 5 divisions because they had a novice and a 4-year-old stakes in there. We're not pulling all the data from that. This is the open. So Fernando riding a 4-year-old stud. I think I said he was a mare earlier and I was wrong. It's a 4-year-old stud, no rush. Marks at 229.5. The level 3 is Leonardo Kellerman, and he's been knocking on the door as hard as it gets. He's riding GT Major Money, which is a 6-year-old mare. Marks at 225.5 for Leslie Bronca. And I've got the Sires and Dams down there too. That's a Gunner's Tinseltown. And then the level 2 winner was Edward Wynn, riding Next Top Gunnin' Instructor. That's the 4-year-old mare.
That's great information though too. And like I said, pedigree and genetics mean so much, play a big role now in everything, as far as especially the money that these things bring too. So it can be a great horse, but if they're out of that great mare, it makes a huge difference. So yeah, great stuff.
Well, I think the thing that's interesting is that this is what it's taking to win it. I think the next interesting point is where the cut lines are in each of those divisions, because level 2, you're at the 216, 217 mark, and level 4 is running consistent. It was 222.5 this year, but you can take any level 4 anywhere and it's running 220 to 223. That's where it is. And they're banging on the door of this 230 and where's it going to be? It's just where we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it will be there when the scale gets used. That's what that'll be.
You think we'll live to see it?
I don't know, but yeah, we'll, we're trying. So,
yeah,
there's some interesting information on that you have ahead of us here yet. So
Yeah,
good
well,
stuff.
we're going to go to using the scale. Using the scale is a big one. This is because now you got to remember, because Oklahoma split it. So you can actually do the analysis on section 1 and an analysis on section 2 or an analysis on the entire draw as one open derby. So we've got data that will look at some of those nuances. This chart is looking at the blue is 2025 and the green is 2026. So it's 2026, both sections combined. So when you put those two sections into one big draw for the open derby, this is they're using the scale, comparing it to last year, because that's the same comparison. Then when we look at the two sections, it'll be a little bit more detailed. This shows you what's going on. Plus half is obvious, plus one. Here's what I thought was interesting. 94.9% of all the marks were from 0 to +1. That's phenomenal. And that's deep. And I don't care who you are.
Right.
That's just a fact. 85% of the marks are from -half to +half. But you're talking about 9% of them being -half to 0, having the oops. The bulk of this is on the good side, which is not new news.
No. Yeah. The low end is correct. I mean, it's so many of these things between the 0 and the +1 from a maneuver evaluation standpoint, 94 and almost 95% of those marks, it tells you that they're all either correct as the low end and it goes up from there. So yeah, that's crazy good.
Yeah, I'm going to show you this one just for the fun of it because it's using the scale, but this does two things. On the left-hand side, you can see 2025. And then you have the two sections. So first section on Friday, second section on Saturday, and you can see where Saturday obviously takes a step up. The depth of combat, and that's because you got your level 3 and 4 riders in second section, your level 2 and 3. It's horsepower. That's what it is. And then the far right hand is when you put it all together, which we just looked at. So when you look at the whole derby this year compared to last year, you can see it quite obviously across using that scale. I will tell you, these guys used the +1.5 more than they did in Florida. And don't ask me why. It's almost a half of a percent better, but in percentage of volume, because you're talking about over 4,000 maneuvers marked, and they have 0.04% of all those maneuvers mark a +1.5. And I'm going to show you just for the sake, and the point to that story is obviously the spins and both rollbacks and your stop and back. That's where the +1.5s were. They were not in the circles at all. And I'm not sure. I know I could see a bunch of circles and I could have called them +1.5s. They're good movers. They're well balanced. They're doing the thing, highly controlled. As an industry, we're struggling there. I want to show you this one just for fun's sake, because this is the card of Fernando that wins the Derby in Oklahoma. And it's bottom 5 lines, which is right there. But the point is there's no 1.5s in there. He marks a 229.5, and everything in it is a decision between +half and +1. And that's where, and if you look at it, there's only one maneuver they are 100% unanimous on, and that's the left rollback. Everything else is teetering. Even his left spin is his left spin and his right spin are 3/4, 7/8 to being unanimous, but still not quite there. I just think it's interesting. And it does show the struggle, the hard work that the officials got to do. That's all.
Yeah. And no, and it's like I said, we can talk about that forever, but yeah, and a lot of times with the current system, it's very difficult to separate horses at that level because there's not enough distinction in our scale. So it's like I said, we've talked about that till we're blue in the face, but it is so hard. You end up boxing those horses, which again is why we see tie after tie after tie, and they're so very, very close, but they're very difficult to separate.
Yes, they are. It's just an area we've got to keep putting some work into. The one that we talk about a lot, I'm going to take us here. This is about accuracy. And we're also bringing in score spreads just so that everybody can see it, so that you can talk about and be factual about what's happening in these two categories. And these guys, if you want to look at score spreads, they're doing outstanding. They're in the high 80 percentile, pushing right on 90%. of all runs are within the normal 2-point spread. Not a big to-do. But now you start to look at accuracy. They actually did better this year than they did last year. So you can see that right across the board, what's going on. Because we talked about this, it's crossing zero and maneuver spreads of 1 point or more. So you can see exactly what's happening. And each one of those, because the blue is last year, the peach is the first section, the purple or lavender is the second section, and the green is when you put the whole draw together and look at the Derby as one whole section. That's what you're looking at. You can go right across this thing and see exactly what's going on. And this is an example of what we just looked at with the cards, because you're running in the low 60 percentile of being accurate. As the volume goes up, I think the accuracy goes down, regardless of what the final score spread does using 5 judges. I just think it's interesting.
Each and every show is interesting. And like I said, I'm glad to see that we have some improvements, though, as far as the spreads are concerned. That's a big thing when we're talking about 27% of the runs are crossing zero. It's more than the quarter. That's high. It's high. That's an area that we need to continue to find a reason to make that better.
Yes. I think it's interesting that our industry hasn't been screaming more than it does. I'm not sure if it even does. I don't know, but
the people that scream about it are the ones that when they look at their scorecards to see it happens to them. They don't care about anybody else. All right. It's like this happened to me. This is a bad thing. I mean, that's kind of funny, but it's a true story. I am also surprised. Again, like I said, we talk about that till we're blue in the face, but that maneuver evaluation, you can't call it good and can't call it bad at the same time.
Today's time, you can't call it correct and call it very good at the same time, or good and excellent. You just can't. They are distinctly different.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's at that point in time, each one of those officials believed that what they marked it was the correct thing. Monitors are important in that respect, for sure.
They should be.
Yes.
They should be. But by the data, I question what they're doing. And I say that in all due respect. We've both been there in both forms. So I get it and I give them full respect. But again, we're talking about 2026. We used to talk about the importance of winning the fraternity because it was a big, big deal. Not that it's not a big deal today. Yes, but there's 13 of them today. There was one before. So now there's a lot more. So it's a big deal. Yes, that's true. Costs are up there too. By the numbers, they're not progressing at the same rate that the quality of the competition is. Quality of competition is moving faster than the officiating can make fine distinctions. That's the fact.
Agreed. And well put.
So the last piece of data is penalties, because everybody talks about penalties a lot. And it's true. And I think that they are putting the emphasis into being more accurate with penalties. But this is going to emphasize, and this trend is going to continue through the year. That's my prediction. Both those will. The accuracy compared to score spread will continue through the year because we've now seen it 3 years in a row. And the penalties, because this is total penalties is not, our problem in the game is not penalties. When they show up, this is what happens. And you're talking about 12% of all runs are going to have a penalty in it. But of the runs that have the penalties, the majority of them are non-unanimous, which means they're non-reviewable. That begins to create, you're now splitting hairs by half a point. And it does make a difference. It's the bottom of cut lines. It's the bottom of paychecks.
Absolutely. Like I said, and we've talked about that in the past also. Penalties, they either happened or they did not, right? It's not like maybe they happened. So, and anytime it's going to cost somebody a great deal of money, that half point, that's another area that needs to be looked at. For sure.
Yeah. I agree. And I just think that that's where we are as an industry. So then I question, what are the monitors doing? Because it doesn't look like they're putting the emphasis in the right areas. That's why do I say that, is because the numbers say that. Their actual performance says that. And I think Fernando's scorecard is a great example of it. So in summary, we're off to a heck of a start. End of story. $100,000 of prize money given out in 2 events, over 250 horses out there competing across the country. And it's taken 76s to get the big prize. It's as deep as ever, and it's going to be.
Yes. And I'm going to continue to be that way. I'll promise you, we don't have to look at the finalists of these next, but we know where they're going to be at, from a score standpoint. We know what kind of runs these horses are going to have. So not just these wasn't an accident. These first two shows that top end, those top half dozen horses in that level 4 open are marking what they mark. In our day, you had a horse marked at 74, 222. He won everything that there
Everything.
was to win. And now they
Yeah.
struggle to get a paycheck with it. So,
Right.
and rightfully so. They're not making it up. That's how deep this stuff is.
Mhm.
So we've often, you and I have said that before. It's like, good gosh, I'm really happy I don't have to go try to search for one that can carry me to a winner's circle today, because are they
Right.
hard to find?
I pose this as a question. This would be 3/4 of a major chore at home, horse trainers having to self-reflect how good their horse is. Because until you go get it marked, you can think it's +1 and +1.5 material, but until your peers are going to mark it for you, that's a hard one to come to grips with. Would you not agree?
Absolutely. I agree. And I think that there's so much of this that is, I think, probably part of the reason that a lot of these horses are at the level that they're at today is that, back in our day, a lot of times we would work and we'd have somebody that worked for us, and maybe we had one employee or maybe we had two, but only one rode with us because the barn wasn't full enough. We needed multiple riders. One like Casey, I don't know how many Casey Deere's got riding for him. He obviously turns out a great, great product because he's winning like crazy and he's got good kids that are working for him. But we didn't have that, in our day from the number standpoint. But I think one of the things that I would lose all the time when I would go get to a show, unless I was going and showing all summer long, was the speed. And how many times have you had a non-pro rider say, you said, you got to go somewhere. I said, I was flying. No, you were. You know what I mean? It's like, I was running really fast. But what I think these guys today, a lot of these trainers in stable that there's more than one, they're riding together every single day. And they're looking at each other's horses and they know what that level is. And you got good help and you're looking at this thing and you know what it's going to take. But you're there riding by yourself like we did back in the day. You lose a little bit of that. Well, you don't have that. You don't have that direct challenge on a daily basis. And you get somewhere and you go, oh, wow, I got some work to do. We got to go back home. Right. So anyway,
The old
that's
barn blindness.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, yeah.
and you can be woke up, but it's today, which you said something that's earlier, that's there's a niche that you can fill. I mean, young trainers that are trying to figure out a spot to go. And we just talked about that. There's a shortage of affordable non-pro horses that somebody can go find and get in the business, but they're not there. And because they're all priced through the roof, and maybe some of them shouldn't be priced through the roof, but they're going to be that way anyway. But to create that product is still possible. And you don't have to worry about when you find that good one, you can go take it. You don't have to go try to make that 70 through that 218 to 219 horse mark, that 222 that he or she can't do. Anyway, there's a lot of room yet still for good horses and good trainers.
Yes. I would say there's more room now than there's ever been,
Absolutely.
without a doubt. So yes, and I think the chore is finding your place, your niche, your spot, what you're comfortable with and what you can turn over and make money with and service the industry. Does everybody have to be in the top 10 of the fraternity? No, you don't. You don't even have to go to the fraternity.
No, absolutely. I agree. So it's a great, great sport, great industry. And it's like, and those will get filled, I think, but that, so much is, I think in today's day and age from that open rider is put on that. And there's a lot, there's, good guys. I'll have a non-pro horse or two in the barn too, but they're focused mostly on open and what can carry me. And that's what I want instead of what can I create to help this market. Interesting, but yeah, good stuff. We've got all kinds of fun stuff coming up. I can't wait to see the next one already.
We'll get to that in a second, but I'm going to pose another interesting question because the international market in the reining horses is definitely different. It's different than it was. They're
Sure.
not buying as much. They got a lot. They can supply their own. Are they coming here? The answer is yes. Are we shuffling around a little bit? Yes, but not as much as we used to. And it's happening here in the U.S. more than anything. All of that is true. But then comes, and the amount of studs that are out there, because we've seen this play before too. Will the market reestablish itself in a new form that will bring prices down a touch, but still keep them? If prices came down a touch to the middle part of our industry, would more people play this game? That's the question. And I think the volume of horses being made, because there's a lot of them, I don't think they're getting sold. And it's because they're holding out for that longer dollar. Am I somewhat on target here?
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
there's no question about that. That's an accurate decision. And I think probably a lot of times what happens is, and that is because we're talking about this because we can. We've been through it, we've lived it. But what happens, I think, is that those prospects are oversold many times in the market price. In other words, somebody comes and they see that yearling because they can't afford to buy the 2-year-old, and that yearling still costs them 50,000 or 60,000 or 75,000 or whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden it doesn't work. And they've got another 50,000 in training in it over 2 years' time. And all of a sudden we've got this $125,000 or $150,000 in this thing, and we can't sell it. And we used to do that in our day. That same horse with us was in dollars. You know what I mean? By the time and if we could sell it for 20, that person would play again because they didn't mind losing that $10,000. But if you tell them that, oh shit, we're going to lose 100, we may not want to go there again. And it costs a lot to get these things to a horse show. But I think probably initially that, and granted, there's tons of cost involved in breeding and raising these things. And like I said, the giant jackpot, you know what I mean? The stallion owners have to pay and the mare owners are paying and that full enrollment fees and all that stuff that goes with it. The reason that some of those things are hard to sell for so much money is because they initially paid so much for them. But for people, a lot of times, we often say that, or did in the past, that people would pay more for the dream than the reality. In other words, they would pay more for a prospect than they would that finish show a lot of times. You know, so yeah, it's food for thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's that. The futurity was always the carrot or the lottery or
Sure.
that dream,
Right?
no doubt about it. And so having that dream and pursuing that dream and having it come to fruition, I think yes, it's fantastic.
Yep.
Which is different than wanting a good show horse and go show. Yes, I agree. I think the interesting piece is when we talk about breeding, because have you been paying attention at all? Because the AQHA and the 2-year rule, do you know what I'm talking about when I bring that up? Well, because it's about deceased horses. And the fact that the breeding pressure is on the stallion owners, that's not new news, but it's higher pressure now, economics. And it's not like they're breeding twice as many horses because they have cooled semen and frozen semen. It's not true. I just heard some stats because the AQHA is going through the 2-year rule right now. The leading studs in the AQHA registry are 200 mares in a year. Well, if you're spending whatever it is, 30 to 40,000 to have your stud in all these breeding programs so that the foals are there, you're not breeding another 25 or 30% more foals. And it's not because technology will let you, it's because the market's not there. So I think that's fascinating. Now we're going to start pushing another 500 studs through the marketplace that should be geldings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so, that's really, really funny. And I mean, we're talking back to that stud thing again. There's been many, many times I've had somebody bring a horse to me. I said, would you breed a mare to it? The guy's riding it, right? And would you breed a mare to that thing? No.
Why is he a stud?
Why is he a stud, right? So, yeah, it's been that way forever. So it's not going to change tomorrow either. So, but yeah, interesting. Really.
It's going to be interesting to see how the year goes.
Yeah.
So we got show number 2 under the belt, and they're knocking on the door, which is what we expected. The next ones are coming up. It's going to be back to back. We'll probably do one show with both combined. It'll depend on the volume, but the Cactus Classic's going to have a derby, and the Run for the Million qualifier is a standalone that's there in Weatherford in your neck of the business. And they're talking about everything's sold out already.
I don't know about the live stream on that thing. I haven't even tried to find that yet. I assume that it's going to be there. Probably you're going to need to pay for it. But yeah, as far as going to watch it like we did in Scottsdale, not.
Isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
No chance. Right.
Right. And it's because I'm assuming it's at a private. I've never been to his ranch. It can't be like going to a fairgrounds. It's not that big, is it?
Right. No, I don't think so. So,
right.
And but actually it's, it's not a bad problem to have.
No, it's a great one. Well, the thing that's interesting, they're going to qualify 9 horses because remember, Fernando is automatically qualified because he got hurt last year.
Right.
And they took his slot last year and pushed it forward to this year. So he's already qualified, which is like pretty cool.
Yep. I think it's great.
So it's going to be interesting to see, do they get 100 head trying to get 9 slots? We'll see. Yeah. And the Cactus Classic is going to be running another 80 to 100 head is what I would guess.
And that's a set of horses that will come back very likely those horses that are going to be showing here are going to be of Derby and NRBC age. And, they go they're going to have a very difficult run, and that run for $1 million qualifier. And they're going to have to come right back and go show them again. So.
Yes. Well, the thing that's interesting, that the qualifier is 100,000 added. So it will pay well. And yes, they are trying to get in the top 9 spots. The Cactus Classic Derby has 4 divisions in it, 10,000 each. So it's a 40,000 added for the 4 divisions. So if you're going to enter 2 or 3 of them, that's where you are. So it's going to be interesting to see how they choose who goes where.
Right.
Not only who in the rider, but what horse do they take?
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of thought that needs to go into this too, because it's where's my best shot going to be? And yep, absolutely. I can't wait for that. And it'll be interesting to see what the numbers look like on those 2 shows too.
Yes.
So cool.
So don't forget, go to cowboyoffice.com, put your email in if you haven't already. Join with us. We do send out a routine newsletter. Keeps kind of a highlight of all these things. That's another great way to stay in touch with us. Drop us a note, any questions, inquiries, or curiosities that you all may have. And until the next time, enjoy the ride.
Hey, I want you to stay in the middle, Brian. I'll leave you with a little story that that came from my father, and this would have been back in the early 70s. I remember this, and it happened in South Dakota. My dad was born just off the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, and he loved that country, and that country was ranch country, and it was tough country and tough people in that country. We used to go out there and ride. And my dad loved going out there and riding with those ranchers and going through that country. And he had some really, really good friends out there. And I remember one time that we'd gone out there, and he'd actually shown a couple of the ranch hands out there how to put a better handle on their horse at this time. And there's a guy named Jerry Sampson that was one of these guys that, had raised some horses. And Jack, my father, said, well, Jerry, he said, have you been working on those exercises I give you, kind of putting a better handle on your horse? And Jerry said, yeah, Jack, he said, I sure have. He said, I got where I can write my name with it. He said, that's how good. He said, I've got this horse. I broke this horse in. And there was another one of these old ranchers that was, I'm sure I couldn't even tell how old he was, but he was a tough old cook. He had ranched out there in that tough country forever. He just shook his head. He said, I have no idea why the hell you'd want to teach a horse all that unnecessary shit. It was just, struck me as funny at today's day and age. If you could have showed that same set of guys what we're doing and what these horses are doing, they'd have just, the old rancher probably would have still thought the same thing, because it didn't do him one bit of good. But,
right.
But writing your name with one was pretty darn broke. So anyway, I'll leave it with that. And
it's very broke.
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait to see y'all again. Thank you for tuning in, and keep it in the middle.
You got it.
Today's episode is brought to you by 4D Productions in cooperation with the Consultment Agency, a full-service agency that helps bring forward-thinking equine brands into the 21st century using digital skills and services such as website development, graphic design, social media, and media production such as the podcast you're consuming here today.